It's that time, ain't it? Hello, everyone. It's me, DuTrip, back with another video. It feels like a long time, like a really long time, 10 months to be exact. Today, I just want to talk a little bit about where I've been and why I've been gone for so long. But before we get into that, I feel like I need to add a little bit of context. Firstly, we all know my friends remotely in Sulfur, right? Hope you remember them because they have been the reason I've disappeared from the internet. Why is that, you might ask? You see, about a couple of years ago, Sulfur introduced me to Remotely, a youth from the Dominican Republic who really loved video editing. At the time, I was mostly trying to focus on streaming, playing Crunker, and trying to have some fun to distract me from some of the more frustrating aspects of my life. That being my lack of funds, crippling student loan debt, and depression, amongst many other things. Reason why Remotely was so important to my channel was that he mainly provided for me something that I felt I desperately needed at the time: exposure for my largely failing to stream. You see, I'm not a really big fan of social media. Probably said I pretty much dislike the entire concept of social media in general. Nevertheless, I realized that without a YouTube channel, my Twitch stream was doomed to continue not bringing me any sort of revenue for the copious amount of time I spent trying and failing to grow it. I would continue to stream while remotely would edit my YouTube videos for me, with Sulfur acting as a sort of manager who would advise me on what kind of content I would try to make. We spent a great deal of time talking about ideas for the channel, coming up with a sort of rhythm that I could easily fall into while providing raw footage for Remotely. Sulfur was also the main negotiator of the price that I would be paying for Remotely services. In the beginning, our plan was simple. I would stream consistently for around 4 to 5 hours a day. I would provide the raw footage remotely by giving them access to my Twitch channel so he could download the stream files, and then remotely would subsequently create a 4 to 5 minute YouTube video with the sole purpose of highlighting just how bad my gameplay is as a sort of running joke, since I was infamous in the Crunker community for being bad at the game. In compensation, I'll pay him around $400 a month, 4 videos a month, so I could adequately budget around the money I was making at the time. In the beginning, this worked swimmingly, and I had no problems with the amount of money I was spending, since remotely did almost all of the work managing my YouTube channel, which involved engaging with my small community, making appealing thumbnails for my videos, coming up with interesting titles for my videos. The problems only started when both Sulfur and Remotely had the idea of scaling up the channel by releasing double the content. Naturally, this meant I'll be paying double the price for Remotely to continue doing his work. However, it was still fine. $800 was nothing in the grand scheme of things if we could successfully get the channel off the ground and somehow find a way to monetize our content. I wholeheartedly believed that with enough time, even if I was pushing it with how much money I was spending on Remotely services, that we would eventually succeed, and was even reassured by Sofa that if we continue to do this, everything would eventually work itself out. Color me surprised when we eventually started running out of ideas for video. There's only so much you can do in Crunker without repeating the same thing over and over again, and diversifying my content was seen as the logical next step if we were going to make this work. Obviously, this didn't work. All that I did when I streamed Crunker was play in pub lobbies and talk to the chat about inconsequential things that wouldn't make a good video. It was then brought to my attention that I should probably start recording more often instead of streaming, since that would provide me with the best environment for making commentary on the gameplay, and ultimately make Remotely's job of editing much easier, since I was not constantly sidetracked by chatters while trying to commentate. I was now no longer streaming as much, which honestly should have been a big red flag to me at the time, since streaming was something that I really enjoyed doing. However, I could adapt, and I made the best of my situation by streaming as often as I could while providing remotely with recording so I wouldn't lose out on a source of social interaction that I was desperately needing. This still did nothing to address the fact that we were running out of ideas with Crunker, and I was going to have to either abandon the last game I honestly enjoyed playing or bite the bullet and start playing other games. Unfortunately, this endeavor failed to garner enough attention to justify doing it, since I was only getting around 200 views per video that was not related to Crunker. Therefore, the only solution was to double down on Crunker, since that seemed like the best business decision to make at the time. However, we would have never guessed that the dev team would literally implode and the game would stagnate to the point that it just didn't make any more sense to continue playing it, which is why I decided to quit and focus on something else. This is where we finally get to the crux of the issue with having Remotely as my editor. He was a bit too ambitious and tried to force the issue of monetizing the channel instead of taking a more conservative approach and slowly growing the channel over the course of, let's say, 5 to 6 years. What do I mean by this exactly? Well, this is when we started to latch on to the idea of making shorts as a strategy for gaining subscribers instead of creating normal YouTube content. This made sense since Crunker was dying, I didn't have a main game to play, so the decision to start making Omegle and Monkey App content seemed to be the best choice. The only problem I had with this was how much money I was actually spending to make this a reality. In order for remotely to work on this daily, I had to pay around $1,300 a month just to keep the channel running. Unfortunately, I was only making around $2,000 at the time. Obviously, this was not feasible, nor was it sustainable in the long term, and I eventually had to work 2 jobs just to make this work, which was something that I didn't want to do when I started this journey, because when I started streaming, I worked 2 jobs, working every single day at McDonald's and Publix, and it was a nightmare. I absolutely hated it, and now I had to do it again just to pay for the overhead of running my YouTube channel. It got so bad that my parents had to get involved and eventually give me an ultimatum. Either I quit working one of my jobs and stop paying remotely, or I would get kicked out of my mother's house and live on my own, forcing me into a situation where I couldn't pay for remotely services, regardless of what I wanted. For context, my parents would try to involve themselves in my life despite the divorce because my mental health was declining, and I was honestly not doing too much to turn it around. However, when I informed Remotely and Software about this, all they could focus on was continuing to run the channel. Mind you, at this time, I was already in debt because of my student loans, and paying Remotely this absurd amount of money to run my YouTube channel for me was adding up to the point that I had to use credit cards to keep me paid. Ultimately, from doing this for a period of several months, I eventually racked up a debt around $5,000, $8,000 on top of what I already owed to the government for my education, which I was also obligated to start paying back very soon around this time, further putting me into a financially difficult situation. Further compounding on this, I was laid off from my job and unemployed for a period of 2 to 3 months with only $1,300 to my name, which I now had to practically ration just to last me until I found my next job. Rolly and Sulfur, I'm sorry. I can no longer continue to work with you if I want to make this YouTube dream a reality. I simply do not have the funds, no matter how little I actually pay remotely to make this work. We should have never tried to do this during a time when I was making too little money. It was always bound to fail. Now that I've gotten this off my chest, I will tell the both of you and all of my very small audience what I'm going to do. I will no longer subject myself to making content that undermines the image that I want to create for myself. This means no more making fun of myself for views. I will not rely on Remotely to run my channel for me anymore, and I will handle all the video editing by myself if I must, no matter how bad I am at editing. I will take a more active role in engagement with my community, and I will try my best to become a YouTuber that deserves respect from his peers and community. These are the goals I've set for myself, and I will see them to fruition. To my audience, I'm sorry that it took me this long to finally start uploading again. I will make no promises about having a consistent uploading schedule, but I will have a promise to put forth more effort in content creation by writing out my thoughts beforehand, as I have done now, and presenting my ideas in a more organized manner. The truth of the matter is that no matter how foolish I have made myself seem with the content you have seen so far from me, I can actually be quite well spoken if I am given time to properly organize my thoughts. However, I can only do so much before I eventually run out of things to say or topics to talk about, which is why I'm going to ask you, the viewers, what is it that you want to see from me? Let me know what kind of content you would like to see in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like or subscribe if you're a new viewer. Peace out.